Following the execution of her husband, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, near the end of the 7 AD year, Julilla, a young widow with 2 children, found herself isolated. Her father, Marcus Agrippa, had passed away nearly 2 decades earlier. Her mother and grandmother, Julia and Scribonia, were held captive in the town of Rhegium. Her brothers, Gaius and Lucius, had both died under mysterious circumstances, and her last brother, Agrippa Posthumus, was exiled to the island of Planasia. Of the 5 children born to Marcus Agrippa and Julia Caesarius Filia, only Julilla and her younger sister remained. But that sister, Vipsania Julia, had been given over to the Claudians when Julilla's grandfather, Caesar Augustus, in his haste to tie together the 2 families, gave her in marriage to Germanicus, a grandson of his wife's. Julilla's daughter, Aemilia Lepida, had also been drawn into the hurried fusing of the Julian and Claudian lines by being betrothed to the younger brother of Germanicus. But, after her husband's death, Julilla and her children were ostracized from the family of Caesar Augustus, Julilla's own biological grandfather. Not only was her daughter's betrothal quickly cancelled, but Julilla's son, Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, was omitted in the new line of succession drawn up by her grandfather, which seemed to center around the descendants of Livia Drusilla, Caesar Augustus's Claudian wife. Lucius Aemilius Paulus, Julilla's late husband, had been more than her first cousin, and a strategic political match. Paulus was a nephew of the Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, who, during the civil wars, had shared the triumvirate with Julilla's grandfather and Marcus Antonius. Following a failed attempt to overthrow the young Caesar Divi Filius in Sicily, in 36 BC, Lepidus had been formally stripped of his triumviral office and forced into exile, permitted to keep only his title of Pontifex Maximus, a lifelong priesthood, which then passed directly to Caesar Augustus, when the former triumvir died, in 12 BC. Having been implicated in a plot with Marcus Antonius and Cleopatra to assassinate Caesar Divi Filius, Lepidus's eponymously named son had predeceased him, executed at the close of the civil wars, and leaving the former triumvir's brother, Paulus Aemilius Lepidus, to carry on the family name. Marrying Cornelia, the daughter of Scribonia, Paulus Aemilius Lepidus became the father of a daughter and 2 sons, one of whom would marry Julilla. But now, Julilla's husband was gone. Without a man, she was powerless to fight the Claudians for the political inheritance that rightfully belonged to her children. And so, Julilla turned to a new man. His name was Decimus Junius Silanus. Silanus was the son of Gaius Junius Silanus, a relative of the Marcus Junius Brutus who, leading the charge against the triumvirs, had fought and died for his country. At Philippi. Silanus' mother was Appia Claudia, granddaughter of Fulvia and Publius Clodius, and sister of the Appius Claudius, who had been exiled along with Julilla's mother, for his role in securing the support of the city's plebs to her political cause. Apart from the Claudians, the Junii Silanii were one of Rome's last patrician families left standing, and one of the most powerful. Not only did Julilla enter into a relationship with Silanus, but she arranged for the betrothal of her daughter, Aemilia, to one of his younger cousins, Marcus Junius Silanus Torquatus. Like her mother before her, Julilla and Silanus took up their places in the center of the Roman populate zeitgeist, attracting many of the artists, musicians, and philosophers that had once gathered around her mother, Julia. Publius Ovidius Naso, known as the poet Ovid, a favorite once patronized by Julilla's mother, also flocked with the rest to Julilla and Silanus, where he made the unforgivable mistake of witnessing something which should not have taken place. Sometime before the end of the 8 AD year, Julilla moved into a new, upgraded, palatial villa she had constructed in the country. There, she held an extravagant party, inviting many of her friends and sympathizers. Among the crowd of guests clamoring for a view of Julilla's new, ostentatious home was her grandfather, Caesar Augustus. After enjoying a feast fit for kings, and visiting with his great-grandchildren, Marcus and Aemilia, the party finally came to its end. As the guests filed out of Julilla's home, they noticed soldiers posted outside. Then, Caesar Augustus gave the order. Julilla was apprehended and taken into custody, and the soldiers immediately set about destroying her wealthy villa. Smashing down every wall, Julilla's home was decimated, left in a pile of rubble. Decimus Junius Silanus, a scion of the powerful Junii family, a family Julilla's grandfather could not afford to fully offend with accusations of maestas, was charged simply with adultery, under the Lex Julia Adulteris Coascendis. Silanus was told to leave Rome at once, by order of Caesar Augustus, and without senatorial process, or the participation of any legal judge. The poet Ovid was also exiled to the town of Tomis on the Black Sea, forbidden ever to reveal the mistake he had witnessed. His official crime lay in a literary work called the Os Omatoria, a naughty poem celebrating adultery, which Ovid had written and circulated a decade earlier. But in his own words, Ovid wrote that he had been punished for a poem and a mistake. Following her arrest, the demolition of her expensive country villa, and the banishment of Decimus Junius Silanus, Julilla was sentenced. Like her grandmother, mother, and youngest brother, she was exiled from Rome, transported to an island of her own. Tremorisi sat off the coast of the province of Apulia, positioned near the Gorgono Peninsula in the Adriatic Sea. The official reasons given for Julilla's banishment reflected those given 10 years earlier for her mother's fall from grace. Julilla was accused of licentious and wanton behavior, in violation of Rome's strict code of morality, a code imposed on the Roman people by her own grandfather, Caesar Augustus. As with the rest of her exiled family, Julilla was given lodgings in which to live, and a modest stipend for maintaining her daily needs, but she was not permitted to leave the island, ever. By the summer of 9 AD, the unborn child tucked discreetly within her womb when she had been arrested, was ready to come into the world. After giving birth to this third child on the island of Tremorisi, Julilla learned firsthand the harsh reality of what had once been done to her grandmother, Scribonia. Just as Caesar Divi Filius had taken the infant, Julia, from Scribonia, on the very day she was born, replacing Scribonia's empty hands with a writ of divorce, so too did he now, as Caesar Augustus, order Julilla's newborn snatched from her arms, and left abandoned, on the side of a mountain. Back in Rome, Caesar Augustus stood before the Senate, and decreed that his daughter Julia, and grandchildren, Agrippa Postumus and Julilla, were forbidden to ever return to the city. The father of the nation confirmed these wishes further, by adding to his last will and testament orders that, even when they died, Julia, Julilla, and Postumus were prohibited from being placed within the mausoleum of Augustus, which housed the remains of Augustus's most revered family members. His nephew, Marcus Claudius Marcellus, his son-in-law, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, his stepson, Nero Claudius Drusus, and his grandsons and adopted heirs, Gaius and Lucius Caesar. Following the death of Julilla's father in 12 BC, a political battle had raged between the city's populist faction and the Senate's conservative families, each maneuvering to make certain their candidate became successor to the military power of Caesar Augustus. The populists, who had witnessed a rising meritocracy under Caesar Augustus, supported, through his natural descendants, the continuation of a government wherein a man could rise by merit, as had Marcus Agrippa. But the conservative families who favored elitism, played a more subtle, senatorial game, quietly selling their support to the Claudians in anticipation of a revival of Rome's traditional oligarchy through Tiberius. Finally, after 20 years of protests and politics, exiles and executions, the succession of Caesar Augustus was firmly established through the Claudians. But Julilla, separated from her children and left to wither on the island of Tremorisi, still had one sister who remained free, Vipsania Julia, otherwise known as Agrippina.